The pancreas has both exocrine and endocrine functions. We saw the exocrine function in the digestive system, and now we will talk about the endocrine system. The main pancreatic hormones are glucagon and insulin, and both are important in regulating blood glucose levels. These are produced by endocrine cells in an area called islet of Langerhans within the pancreas. And we have alpha cells that will secrete glucagon, and beta cells would secrete insulin. Glucagon would raise blood sugar because it will cause breakdown of glycogen into glucose in the liver, whereas insulin would lower the blood sugar because it promotes uptake of sugar by cells in the liver, muscles, and adipose tissue. Insulin, additionally, would promote the conversion of glucose into glycogen and proteins and fat. So after a meal, we will see an increase in insulin secretion and decrease in glucagon secretion. Insulin, again, would lower the blood sugar. So after a meal, we will see increase in insulin, but between meals, we will see decrease in insulin and increase in glucagon secretion to maintain certain levels of sugar. The other gland we'll talk about is the adrenal gland. And the adrenal gland is made out of two areas. It's made out of adrenal cortex and the adrenal medulla. The cortex is the outer layer. Let's draw it maybe in blue. The cortex is the outer layer, whereas the medulla is the inner layer. Both of these areas produce different types of hormones. The adrenal cortex produces a set of hormones. Actually, it produces different sets of hormones, but one we will focus on two, very major two. Glucocorticoids. This is the first one. And the second one is something called mineralocorticoids. The glucocorticoids is responsible to maintain blood sugars. So this is one of the mechanisms to maintain blood sugar, especially during fasting. Also, it will suppress inflammatory responses, and it will release its hormones. Main hormone of it is called cortisol. This is secreted through influence of hypothalamus pituitary secretion. Mineralocorticoids, for example, aldosterone. These are important in regulating ions. We're talking mainly about sodium, potassium, and to a certain extent water, because usually water would follow sodium. The mineralocorticoids will act on the kidney, and they will promote sodium reabsorption, potassium dumption, or potassium exertion through urine. So these are the two sets of hormones within the adrenal cortex. For the medulla, we have another two hormones, two main hormones, and two basically are of the same family, epinephrine and norepinephrine. Both hormones, we can consider them as a neuroendocrine origin. So they are originated from the nervous system. And basically the adrenal medulla is a very similar structure to the nervous system. And their secretions, the secretions of epinephrine and norepinephrine, is stimulated by the sympathetic nervous system. So they will enhance the fight or flight response. So they will enhance fight or flight response. That is the sympathetic response of the, or that's the response for the sympathetic stimulation of from the nervous system. Another two glands are the thyroid and the parathyroid glands. And the thyroid gland is located just beneath the larynx. This is the thyroid gland. And the parathyroid glands are 4 to 8 small glands on the posterior side of the thyroid gland itself. Both thyroid and parathyroid glands are important in regulating calcium balance. Thyroid gland is also important in regulating metabolism. And that's why thyroid hormone, for example, is targeting almost every cell in the body. Now, for the thyroid, its main hormone is something called thyroxine. This would speed up cellular metabolism, and it's secreted in two forms, T4 and T3. These are related to the number of iodine ions within the structure. Both would regulate the production of ATP from glucose and modify the metabolic rate. So this is one hormone of the thyroid gland. The second hormone is called calcitonin. It lowers blood calcium level by decreasing the rate of bone resorption, technically by inhibiting osteoclast, and it will stimulate uptake of calcium by bones. Basically, calcitonin would enhance bone formation. Now, as we said with the thyroxine, iodine is required for the production of the thyroid hormone. Now, if there is inadequate supplies of iodine, then there is less or hyposecretion or hypoproduction of the thyroxine. In order to compensate for that, there will be a feedback mechanism coming from the hypothalamus, coming from the pituitary gland, targeting the thyroid gland, asking the thyroid gland to produce more of thyroxine because there is a hyposecretion of it. But the thyroid gland has nothing to do with the production of thyroxine. The problem is that there is no enough iodine ions to make the thyroxine effective. But since there is stimulation from the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus, then the thyroid gland would start to enlarge, would start to gain mass, trying to respond to those orders of making more thyroxine. In this case, the enlargement of the thyroid gland is something known as Goiter. So iodine deficiency will lead to Goiter, which is the enlargement of the thyroid gland. Calcitonin, as we said, would promote bone growth. It inhibits osteoclast. This would decrease bone resorption, stimulate uptake of calcium by bone. And this is important in bone growth and in development in children. Its effect is that it will lower blood calcium levels. On the other hand, the parathyroid gland produces the parathyroid hormone, which also controls blood calcium levels. But in opposite direction of calcitonin. Here it will secrete into a response to lower blood calcium levels. So let's see here. When we have low calcium levels in the blood, then parathyroid hormone would be released from the parathyroid gland. It will target the kidney to save calcium. It will, the kidneys also will activate reabsorption of calcium in the intestine. Also, the parathyroid hormone would target the osteoclast cells to release some of the calcium from the bone. The osteoclast cells would start to break down some of the bone to release calcium back into the blood. Calcium, if you remember, it's very important in the skeletal muscle function and also in the nervous system and also in the cardiac muscle. It's very important, calcium. Now, if there is increase in the calcium levels, then the thyroid gland will release calcitonin. Calcitonin directly will target the bones, asking them to take up calcium to form bone, and this would return the calcium to its normal levels. I will stop here. When we come back, we'll talk about the testes and the rest of the endocrine system.